Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about my running back draft targets for the 2021 fantasy football season. On today's episode, as you can see on screen today, we're talking about 4 running backs in specific. We're talking about Mike Davis, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, and Kareem Hunt going into our 2021 fantasy football drafts. At this current moment in time, these 4 running backs are being selected in a similar ADP range. Similar to yesterday's video in which we talked about mid-range wide receivers like DJ Moore, Adam Thielen, T. Higgins, and Brandon Ayuk, I wanted to go ahead and expand that and talk about mid-range running backs for those of you who potentially need to go ahead and grab your flex running back and or potentially your RB2 in the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. As of this current moment in time, these are great options in that range. So I wanted to go ahead and give you guys my thought process and opinions and the statistics that potentially justify selecting these players. We'll go ahead and put them in head-to-head matchups and determine which of these running backs we should be drafting in our upcoming 2021 fantasy football draft. Now, similar to yesterday, I'm going to ask you guys to vote down below and let me know which of these running backs, based on all the arguments that I give, should be the running back that we should all be targeting this upcoming season. I went ahead and I totaled the votes yesterday, and it was a majority landslide in the direction of Brandon Ayuk, which I, of course, agreed upon. But again, after I make all of my arguments today, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section, and let me know who you think should be the running back we're going after. Now, before we begin today's video, I want to, of course, thank you guys for the incredible support. As of late, smashing that like button. I'm trying new things on the channel because, of course, we're trying to grow and potentially bring out different things. The concept behind these kind of videos are things that I personally like, and I just want to inject it into the fantasy football community. So hopefully you guys share that opinion with me. But either way, I do appreciate you guys liking, commenting down below, and being interactive with the community. For those of you who have not joined yet and joined the community, click that subscribe button. We're making fantasy football content for the entirety of the season. Of course, content like this, must draft, rankings, tier list, strength of schedule videos coming out next week. I'm extremely excited about those. Mock drafts, all of that will be included, on top of the fact that we're not stopping there. We're going all the way through the 2021 fantasy football season, all 18 weeks, where we'll be talking about running backs, wide receiver rankings, of course, Sunday morning live streams, waiver wire videos, the hidden gems that many of you, of course, and myself are big fans of. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, join the community. Fantasy football content always coming your way in order to give you an advantage against your league mates this upcoming season. Now, for those of you who are looking for an extra advantage this upcoming season, check out my 2021 fantasy football draft guide. It was just released just this past Monday on my Patreon. The Patreon link is down in the description of the video. For those of you who are interested, go check that out. Besides the 2021 Fantasy Football Draft Guide, there are various perks that you will gain via the Patreon. A lot of content that I'll be making outside of the channel, of course, to kind of give you guys exclusive content and advantages on your own fantasy league. So if that's something that you're interested in, go down in the description of the video, check out my Patreon. I appreciate those of you who have already joined and are supporting the channel that way. For those of you who are not able to do so, it's no problem at all. Your viewership, being able to smash that like button, comment all down below, and your presence here in the Discord community server, that's all I ask for. So thank you once again, everybody. Now, of course, I wanted to go ahead and show you guys a little glimpse as to what is inside the fantasy football draft kit. I've been showing this the last couple videos, but just to give you some perspective for those of you who are new and just checking out this channel for the first time, on screen you'll see the very beginning, the first 3 pages of my quarterback section. This entire draft guide is just trying to give you guys my thought process and opinions as to how I'm going to approach my 2021 fantasy football drafts, the different strategies I've used over the years, and the different statistics that back those strategies in order to, potentially capture a 2021 fantasy football championship. Of course, it'll have all my rankings updated every single week, flex rankings, defense, kickers, wide receiver, all of that, everything. Half PPR, full PPR will be included in the 2021 fantasy football draft guide. So again, thank you those of you who have already checked it out and have purchased so. Hope you enjoy it. Now that we've gone ahead and covered that, let's go ahead and move on to our running back matchups, beginning with, of course, the first matchup on the top of the screen, Mike Davis versus Josh Jacobs. I think that these two running backs are very comparable in terms of their overall ADP and what we could potentially expect to see from them this upcoming season in terms of overall productivity. So I wanted to go ahead, put them in a first round matchup against one another, and determine which of these two running backs gives us the best opportunity to help us win a fantasy championship and is the best overall investment. Let's begin by talking about Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs finishes the number 8 overall running back in a half PPR scoring format last season. Overall, great productivity, but that wasn't the first time that we saw Josh Jacobs have RB1 potential upside. Back in 2019, his rookie season, he had great overall productivity. He was a stud running back, and despite everything that was going on with the Las Vegas Raiders, not having potential positive game scripts, being able to run the ball in the second half, they were losing a couple games here and there by a lot. Josh Jacobs was still a dependable running back. If he had not gotten injured in 2019, he would have in fact finished as the RB9 overall based on the fantasy point averages that he produced in that season. From that, in my opinion, we already chunk a little bit of Mike Davis's HP, his total hit points, because that gives us a little bit more confidence in what the potential of Josh Jacobs is, because we know what he's done in the past. Now, besides averaging 14.32 fantasy points per game last season in those 15 games, he had himself 33 receptions on 45 targets. On top of that, the Las Vegas Raiders, since John Gruden has gotten to the organization, has really turned them around into a run-heavy team. Now, even with Latavius Murray in the past, they've been a run-heavy team. They've even taken that to the next level. In the past 2 seasons, in terms of total rushing attempts from their running backs, the Las Vegas Raiders have ranked 5th and 7th in the National Football League with 394 attempts and 389 attempts in the past 2 seasons. Overall, that's fantastic. Now, if we even go back to 2016, the Las Vegas Raiders, in terms of total running back opportunity, that being rushing attempts or total targets, have been the number 7 overall team in running back opportunities. So again, everything for Josh Jacobs is set up for success. And in my opinion, that continues to take another chunk out of Michael Davis and the argument towards him, because Josh Jacobs is in a perfect situation and has shown that he can be a great running back. But where does this conversation go now? Now that we are, approaching the 2021 season, there is an unfortunate reality. Kenyon Drake, formerly of the Arizona Cardinals, is now a member of this backfield. Kenyon Drake is a former Alabama running back, similar to Josh Jacobs. They have that in common. But unfortunately, Kenyon Drake is coming to take a lot of touches and a lot of carries away from Josh Jacobs, and his potential is going to decrease going into the 2021 season. Let's go ahead and talk about what Kenyon Drake did last year for the Arizona Cardinals. A guy that touched the ball over 250 times for that organization and was the number 14 overall running back in a half PPR scoring format. Again, he went from the 14 overall running back to being a backup this upcoming season. But is he really going to be a backup, or are we going to see a running back by committee rotation because of what Kenyon Drake is capable of doing on the ground, on the goal line, and of course through the air? Besides averaging 12 fantasy points per game last season, Kenyon Drake has been an unstoppable receiving back. Since 2017, he's ranked 12th amongst all running backs in the National Football League in total targets. In fact, he's averaged about 60 targets per season when we look at what he's done with the Arizona Cardinals going back to his days with the Miami Dolphins. So we know what Kenyon Drake is capable of. He is a 3-down back nonetheless, and is very accomplished in the receiving game. And based on the amount of targets that Josh Jacobs saw last year, 45 total, 33 receptions. Of course, they lost Devontae Booker. Last season, Devontae Booker had 93 total attempts, had himself a 4.5 yard per carry average, 17 receptions, and 3 total touchdowns. With Devontae Booker being taken out of this lineup, you still have Jalen Richard there, of course, a PPR threat, to say the very least. But then you also bring in Kenyon Drake, who could siphon some value in that PPR game away from Josh Jacobs, which is what I anticipate this upcoming season. And this is what's beginning to build in terms of hesitation with everyone in drafting Josh Jacobs. How can you go from being a top 12 running back to being drafted in the 5th round? And this is exactly the argument. Because of the fact that Kenyon Drake is in this backfield, there is going to be a lot of carries taken away. I mean, if we even go back to last season, every third series, offensive series specifically, that the Las Vegas Raiders played, Josh Jacobs was never on the field. Devontae Booker came in every third series and played the entire drive. And that's mainly because they either are trying to keep Josh Jacobs healthy because they know that he can't sustain too many touches, or they think maybe we want to go ahead, air it out, keep Devontae Booker in there. He can be just as viable as a receiving back, which scares me because Kenyon Drake is way more talented than Devontae Booker was. With all of these statistics building up against Josh Jacobs, I take a little bit of HP away from him as he begins to hurt himself based on the scenario that he is in this upcoming season. On top of the fact that the Raiders will likely be in a lot of negative game scripts. And when you're in negative game scripts, I don't believe Josh Jacobs is game script proof. When in fact they are down in games, who do you think is going to be in the backfield? Who do you think is going to be catching the ball there? It's going to be Kenyon Drake. It's going to be Jalen Richard. They're going to have their receiving backs on the field. And unless Josh Jacobs is going to benefit from scoring double-digit touchdowns once again and is somehow going to increase his yard per carry average and increase his yards per carry after contact, despite the fact that they've gotten rid of many offensive linemen, Rodney Hudson, their right guard. They've lost a lot of pieces in this offense. And yeah, they've brought in a couple guys here and there, but unless Josh Jacobs is going to defy all the odds and score the ample amount of points that he needs and get that PPR work, I see this is going to be a very difficult season for him. But regardless, Let's talk about the other side of the coin. Let's talk about what Mike Davis provides this upcoming season and the difficulties he's potentially going to face in comparison to what his backfield looks like. Last season, Mike Davis finishes the number 15 overall running back for the Carolina Panthers. This offseason, he was rewarded with his performance last year with, of course, Christian McCaffrey out for majority of the season, having only played 3 games for them, and rewarded with a contract to the Atlanta Falcons. Now that he's going to be the starting running back of the Atlanta Falcons, considering, of course, last year they had Todd Gurley, in years past, Devontae Freeman. We've seen great running backs come and go through the Atlanta Falcons offense, but even just going back to last season, Todd Gurley from weeks 1 through 9 of the 2020 season averaged 14.2 fantasy points per game and was the number 6 overall running back throughout that time, regardless of the offense being a heavy passing scheme with Dirk Cutter as the offense coordinator. Despite all the questions they had with their offensive line being a little bit of a pass blocking team rather than a team that's going to be able to get their nose, get into the fit, and drive block people. But with all that said, Todd Gurley was still a viable back. So now that you insert Mike Davis, who's far more healthy, who has shown that he is a fantastic receiving back, going back to last season, had himself 54 receptions on 64 targets while averaging 13.13 fantasy points per game in a half PPR for the Carolina Panthers. We go ahead and we chunk Josh Jacobs with that. Now, as you can see from the bottom right, Mike Davis has gotten his ultimate energy. It's beginning to build and the flames are beginning to rise in a blue essence. Now, the issue with this current situation is that in comparison to Josh Jacobs, I think Mike Davis is the very last workhorse back that is going to come off the board in the 2021 season. What does that mean? A workhorse back in the National Football League is someone that has unimpeded opportunity, someone that is going to touch majority, maybe even 70% of their team's respective running back attempts. Now, when you look at what this team has done, they have not brought in a running back via the draft. Yes, they signed a couple undrafted free agent rookies, but that is always a stretch as to whether they end up producing. We'll every now and then see a Phillip Lindsay or an Austin Eckler have an incredible season. Otherwise, we really rarely see, actually James Robinson, who we'll talk about in a little bit with Etienne, but very rarely do we see guys come out of absolutely nowhere and win the job. That being said, on top of that, this offseason, in terms of bringing in talent free agent-wise, they brought in Cordell Patterson, Donta Foreman, nothing that I'm afraid about. Along with that, the offensive coordinator and head coach of the Atlanta Falcons is Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith, formerly of the Tennessee Titans, ran a very tight shift over there with the Tennessee Titans, running the ball a lot and very effectively in the last 2 seasons as the offensive coordinator of the Tennessee Titans. He ranked number 1 and number 10 overall in rushing attempts with 463 this past season, of course, helping Derrick Henry surpass 2,000 rushing yards, the 8th player to do so, and the year prior, 368 rushing yards. So if we think about what the Tennessee Titans offense has looked like in the past and what potentially Arthur Smith is going to make this offense look like, I mean, when I think about the Tennessee Titans offense, I think of 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end, and 1 stud running back. Last year, A.J. Brown, Jonnu Smith, and Derrick Henry. Now, when we come over to this offense, of course, you still have a very similar quarterback in terms of overall talent, Tannehill and Ryan at their current stages of their careers. But you also have Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, and Mike Davis. The trifecta, similar to what Arthur Smith was dealing with in Tennessee. So you just go ahead, you bring over an offense that you're going to be running the ball heavily. You have Mike Davis, who in the last couple seasons of his career has been very underutilized in the National Football League, doesn't have many miles on him in comparison to a lot of other running backs. Last season, in terms of elusiveness, had the second missed forced tackles per attempt, only to Nick Chubb. So again, there's a lot of things to like about Mike Davis. There's a lot of opportunity going in his direction. When I looked at the amount of total targets the Atlanta Falcons had last season to running backs, it wasn't like, Matt Ryan is afraid of targeting running backs. In fact, it's been the opposite. Last season, he targeted them over 100 times. And in years past with Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman, he's been very comfortable targeting running backs out of the backfield, giving Mike Davis that edge in the PPR. So when we think about his total opportunity, the fact that he doesn't have a Kenyon Drake looming behind him, potentially taking those extra fantasy points and those things that you need to get over the edge, I think the conversation is done. I think Mike Davis knocks out Josh Jacobs this upcoming season, and he is my running back of choice between this matchup. Now, whether you agree or not, that is very subjective. Let me know down in the comment section between these two guys, who you believe is going to have the better upcoming season. Now we can go ahead and move on to our next matchup for today as we talk about Travis Etienne versus Kareem Hunt. Now this side of the bracket is very interesting. I think both these running backs are very comparable. They are both potentially going to be backup running backs to their starters, of course, Nick Chubb and James Robinson, but they both have the potential upside to get even more touches and get a lot of work in that PPR game. Now the question is, where does this argument go? Which side are we going to lean upon? Let's go ahead and divulge some statistics and see where we end up by the end of this conversation. Let's start with Travis Etienne. Like I mentioned, a first-round pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We have a little bit of a new regime for the Jacksonville Jaguars as they bring in a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, hopefully to potentially turn the tides for this organization, who has been one of the worst in the National Football League for the last couple years. Of course, you had the first overall pick. You bring in Trevor Lawrence. He is a former teammate of course, Travis Etienne from Clemson. And that chemistry is already going to potentially be into effect come week 1. I expect, of course, Travis Etienne, who has shown a very great upside in his receiving game, to be one of Trevor Lawrence's safety blankets. Dumping the ball out of the backfield to him is nothing that they've been shy of doing in the last couple seasons at Clemson. In fact, in the last 2 seasons, Travis Etienne, 85 receptions, 1,020 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. That in itself speaks volumes, because if that comfort is there, if that chemistry is already built, and you're getting in situations that are going to be negative game scripts, then there's a very good potential that we get into a conversation that this team is, at majority of the end of the games, third quarter and beyond, just dumping the ball to Travis Etienne, potentially getting himself upwards of 6 targets and being a huge part of this offense. So in my opinion, that begins to at least take away from what we're expecting from a Kareem Hunt in comparison to the potential targets. I think we could even see more targets from Etienne in comparison to Kareem Hunt based on what we saw just last year in terms of totals. Now, another argument that goes in the favor of Travis Etienne is, of course, the offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevell, formerly of the Detroit Lions. For the last 2 seasons with the Detroit Lions, he has targeted his respective running backs 105 and 99 times. Going back to last season, he dealt with a rookie running back by the name of DeAndre Swift. Though they started him off late, after week 4, he was an absolute monster. Even from weeks 1 through 4, got himself 3 receptions per game. Then after week 4, they had a bye week. They came back in week 5, and funny enough, DeAndre Swift had his breakout game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but that's besides the point. The point is, Darrell Bevell, comfortable with rookie running backs, comfortable with giving them opportunities, and giving them opportunities specifically in the passing game. In my opinion, that just continues to build more of an argument for why we could potentially trust Travis Etienne going into this upcoming season. Now, besides the targets, of course, we're looking for rushing attempts. This is a running back, and he has certainly over the last couple seasons at Clemson proven that he can be a running back everywhere on the field, whether it's short distance, breaking out for big runs. He is capable of it all. Even going back to 2018, Travis Etienne with the Clemson Tigers had the most carries inside the 5-yard line in the NCAA. So we've seen that teams are able to trust him. Dabo Swinney was able to give him the rock consistently on the goal line, and he was able to produce with those statistics. And we know that all of that is fantastic. There's a great argument for the potential of Travis Kelce, especially in half and full PPR scoring formats. And I think that goes ahead and that chunks Kareem Hunt one more time. But the unfortunate matter with Travis Etienne going into this upcoming season, it could be very similar to the idea of a Josh Jacobs, is that there's other running backs in this backfield. James Robinson is coming off of an RB1 season in which he had 1,300 total all-purpose yards and 10 total touchdowns. Now, you also have Carlos Hyde in this backfield. Let's not forget, Carlos Hyde in 2019 for the Houston Texans had 1,000 total rushing yards and 6 total touchdowns. You have very talented running backs in this backfield that have a lot of experience already in the National Football League that could be vying for this RB1 position within their own respective team. Now, of course, the RB1 position for the Jacksonville Jaguars in the last 2 seasons has been very, very valuable in fantasy football. In fact, in a half PPR scoring format, we've seen back-to-back seasons a Jacksonville Jaguar finishes an RB1, going back to 2019 Leonard Fournette and last season James Robinson. And in fact, both of these running backs were able to accomplish it despite being on a team that doesn't have the best offensive line, doesn't have the best quarterback play, are often in negative game scripts because of the fact that they handled 80+% of their team's total running back opportunities. So because of the fact that James Robinson and Leonard Fournette were getting themselves all of the touches, whether it was on the ground or through the air, they were able to carve themselves out an RB1 overall season because opportunity leads to success in fantasy football. And that's my concern here. Travis Etienne is going to have opportunity. He can't touch the ball 12 times a game, but how much opportunity is he going to get in comparison to these other running backs? Is he going to get the goal line touches? Are the touchdowns going to be there? Are there going to be circumstances where James Robinson and Carlos Hyde are going to be on the field because they don't want to tip their hand? If Etienne comes in the game and they know they're passing the ball, then that's going to be a problem. So they keep in these other running backs and they give them all potential work in the passing game. So it makes it that much harder on defensive coordinators to be able to adjust defensively because they're not given the potential nod. Oh, here comes Etienne. Let's begin to potentially cover him coming off the backfield. He might end up running a wheel or something like that. Screen pass coming. Again, despite all of the arguments that are lined up for the potential of Travis Etienne, I think that there's going to be just as many arguments for the conversation in Kareem Hunt's case. So let's talk about Kareem Hunt. Last season, he finishes the number 9 overall running back in fantasy football, averaging 12.47 fantasy points per game in a 16-game season. With a total of 51 targets, was able to garner 38 receptions. Now, in comparison to the past with the Cleveland Browns, Kareem Hunt has shown that he can even be a more productive receiving back. Going back to 2019, after his suspension, he came back and played 8 games for the Cleveland Browns, and had already produced 37 receptions in comparison to 38 this past season. So in half the time was able to produce just as many receptions, but it depends on what the offensive coordinator wants. You know, we're going into a 2021 season similar to 2020 where we have Kevin Stefanski as the offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. And though we saw a lot of productivity out of Kareem Hunt this last season, this is a team that wants to heavily run the ball. And now that they get Nick Chubb back, what could we potentially expect to see from Kareem Hunt? Now, without Chubb in the lineup, Kareem Hunt last season in 4 games was able to produce 13.72 fantasy points per game on average in a half PPR. With Kareem Hunt in the lineup, produced 11.9 fantasy points per game and was averaging about 11 total attempts per game. So to be honest, getting himself 11 attempts per game, averaging about 2.5 receptions per game, about 13.5 total touches, and getting himself about 12 fantasy points per game, that continues to build the potential argument for Kareem Hunt, therefore taking a little bit of the HP away from Travis Etienne. But let's get to the next conversation here. Like I mentioned, Kevin Stefanski being the offensive coordinator of this team, and a team that loves to run the ball. In fact, in the last 2 seasons, Kevin Stefanski, when he's been with the Browns and the Minnesota Vikings, has coached his teams to being the number 3 ranked and number 2 ranked overall team in total running back attempts, with 421 this last season and 422 the season prior with Dalvin Cook. And in terms of total running back opportunity, has been in the top 7 in back-to-back seasons, with 494 this past season and 522 the year before. So we know this team wants to feed their running backs the ball. That's the reason why we were able to see Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt both finish as RB1s this past season as the number 9 and 10th ranked running backs. Now the question is, can we potentially see that once again this upcoming year? It's going to be certainly tough considering the fact that we're not going to see Nick Chubb miss any time. But even with Nick Chubb in the lineup, we've seen a lot of productivity. Kareem Hunt last season is a guy that surpassed 1,100 total yards from scrimmage and scored 11 touchdowns. Let's say, for example, we go ahead and eliminate the touchdowns he scored without Nick Chubb in the lineup. That makes 4 of them. He still ends up getting himself 12 to 13 touches per game, maybe even more depending on the game script, because when this Cleveland Browns team is up in games and they're winning by a lot, you think they're going to run Nick Chubb, or do you believe they're going to run the ball with Kareem Hunt, who's the backup running back, as they try to keep their stud that they just signed to a brand new contract healthy? I think they're going to go ahead and rest Nick Chubb in those games. But let's say they're in the opposite end of the spectrum. They're losing in a game. Where are they going to go? They're going to bring in the guy that is just as capable of a pass blocker and receiver, and they're going to bring in Kareem Hunt. So with the opportunity he has been given with the Cleveland Browns, it has almost made him game script proof. And with that, we go ahead and take another chunk out of Travis Etienne, and we get into a very tied matchup. These two guys can go either way at this point. Both of them charged up their energy meters. You see the blue flames, kind of resonating from the bottom of the screen. The question is, what is going to be the defining factor between these two players? We have one guy that is a rookie that has comfort with the quarterback position, is being dropped into an organization that perhaps isn't committing to James Robinson for the future, wants to get their, Etienne involved. Darrell Bevel loves to pass the ball to the running back. But now you have another offense who loves to run the ball, runs the ball more than just about anybody in the National Football League, is going to give their backup running back as many touches as some starters in the National Football League with over 200. He's going to be able to score 7+ touchdowns this upcoming season, on top of the fact that they have the best offensive line in the National Football League. if in fact we end up seeing Nick Chubb go down, we've seen Kareem Hunt dominate with the opportunities he's given. I think the defining factor between these two players is one of two things. When we talk about offenses in the National Football League producing two running backs being within the top 24 of the running back rankings by season's end, we've very rarely seen it. In fact, like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt accomplishing that last season is very rare. In fact, since 2016, we've only seen 12 pairs of running backs accomplish this, in which they've been able to both finish within the top 24. But the reason that I lean in the direction of Kareem Hunt in this scenario is because in 11 of those 12 opportunities, the two running backs have finished within the top 24 overall rankings for their position. Those respective running backs belong to teams that were in the top 12 in terms of total running back opportunity. And like I mentioned earlier, with how much opportunity Kevin Stefanski gives to his respective running backs, this argument, in my opinion, leans in a direction and KOs Travis Etienne going into this upcoming season. I will take the veteran. I will take the guy that has proven year over year that he's an incredible running back. I'll go with Kareem Hunt. And though it is a very close argument, and the argument could very easily go in the direction of Travis Etienne in a full PPR. We're talking half PPR today, and that is where we conclude this argument. So we move back to, of course, the bracket. We'll go ahead and advance Mike Davis and Kareem Hunt. And now the question remains, between these two running backs, who am I more confident in potentially starting? Both of them have incredible arguments going for them this upcoming season, with opportunities galore, with the potential for a lot of touchdowns, work in the receiving game, all things that we want to see from our respective running backs. Whether these guys are the third running back on your team going to be filling into your flex position, or guys that are potentially going to be your RB2s, they've got great arguments for them. But let's go ahead and as a community decide. Comment down below. Let me know who you think wins this. If you think Travis Etienne or Josh Jacobs should have won the round before, let me know down in the comment section who you think is going to be the best overall running back out of these four respective running backs this upcoming season. Between the two remaining, I believe Mike Davis is going to be the better overall running back, but I have just one vote. You guys let me know down in the comment section. Let's figure out who is going to be the best running back this upcoming season in terms of a consensus. Either way, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. I'm going to try to always improve things like this. If you like content like this, you got to smash that like button, and you got to let me know down below in the comment section if you do, because I will be absolutely willing to do this for the quarterback position, guys that are potentially on that fringe, QB1 conversation, a Jalen Hurts, a Ryan Tannehill, a Matthew Stafford. Which one of those guys is going to be the best this upcoming season? Or we could even do it for the tight end position, where, I've always talked about drafting one of the upper echelon tight ends. Maybe we talk about the tight ends that are ranked 7 through 10 and determine which of those guys we should be going after this upcoming season. Let me know down below in the comment section. Smash that like button. And if you guys, of course, like the content and want to get more, you can go down to the description of the video, find my Patreon. Again, my 2021 Fantasy Football Draft Guide is available now. So if that's something that you're interested in, check it out. I do appreciate the support, guys. And until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Peace.